All right, let's just dive right in. If you use a continuous glucose monitor, a CGM, you know it's a total fire hose of data. I mean, numbers, charts, graphs. But what does it all actually mean? Well, today we're going to break it all down and teach you how to read that data just like your doctor does. Does this sound familiar to you? You're getting 288 glucose readings every single day. You're staring at the charts, trying to connect the dots. Then you walk into your doctor's office. They take one look at your report for, 5 minutes tops, and they immediately point out these patterns that you've been missing for months. You're just sitting there thinking, how do they do that? Well, I'm here to tell you it's not some kind of magic. They're just using a simple, systematic framework. And that's what we're going to do in this explainer. We're going to teach you that exact framework. By the time we're done here, you'll be able to turn that overwhelming mess of data into clear, actionable insights. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to cover the 5 core metrics that doctors look at right away. Then we'll decode the single most important visual, the AGP chart. After that, we'll learn how to spot those critical patterns hiding in your data. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with a data-driven action plan you can actually use. Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, the 5 core metrics. Seriously, if you can get a handle on just these 5 numbers, you'll understand about 80% of what really matters in all that glucose data. This is the foundation. First up, and you really need to remember this one, is time and range, or TIR. This is, without a doubt, the most important metric. It's just a simple percentage of time that your glucose stays in that sweet spot between 70 and 180. The higher this number is, the lower your risk of long-term complications. It's that direct. So what are we aiming for? Well, the big goal for most people is to get that TIR above 70%. You can see on this chart here, hitting over 70% is considered excellent control, and it usually lines up with an HbA1c of less than 7%. If you're in that 50 to 70% zone, that's pretty good, but you've got some room to improve. And if you're below 50%, well, that's a clear signal that it's time to make some real changes. All right, next are 2 metrics that are basically 2 sides of the same coin: average glucose and the glucose management indicator, or GMI. Your average glucose is, well, it's exactly what it sounds like. But the GMI is really cool. It takes that average and basically gives you a sneak peek of what your next HbA1c lab test is going to look like. It's a fantastic way to see how you're doing between those doctor visits. And the target here? For most adults, the goal is to keep that average glucose below 154 milligrams per deciliter. That number lines up almost perfectly with that GMI target of less than 7%. It's a nice, clear number to shoot for. But hold on, here's a really important question. Is having a good average the whole story? I mean, think about it. What if your average is 150, but you get there by bouncing from a scary low of 60 all the way up to a high of 250? That doesn't sound very stable, does it? And that's exactly where our next metric comes into play. And that metric is the coefficient of variation, or CV. The easiest way to think about this is as your personal stability score. It measures how wild the swings are around your average. With CV, it's simple. Lower is always, always better. This is what tells you if your glucose is like a calm, gentle lake or a crazy roller coaster. So the magic number to aim for is a CV below 36%. That tells you your glucose is pretty stable. But if your CV is above 36%, that's a sign of high variability. And here's the key. Even if you have a great average, a high CV is a huge red flag for doctors because all those ups and downs increase your risk of dangerous highs and especially dangerous lows. Okay, so our last core metric is actually 2, time above range, or TAR, and time below range, or TBR. Think of these like the guardrails on a highway. TAR tells you the percentage of time you're going too high, over 180, but it's TBR that every doctor zeroes in on. That's the percentage of time your glucose drops too low, below 70, which is hypoglycemia. The target for time below range is less than 4%. And let me be clear, this is a top priority. Doctors take this very seriously. Why? Because going too low is immediately dangerous. If a doctor sees a TBR creeping over that 4% mark, fixing that becomes priority number 1. Period. Phew, okay, we've got the 5 core numbers down. Now let's see how they all come together on the main stage. It's time to decode the AGP chart. The ambulatory glucose profile is, hands down, the most powerful visual tool doctors use to see your entire day, your week, your month, all in one snapshot. And you know what? Reading it is way easier than it looks. You just have to follow 3 simple steps. First, find that dark median line in the middle. Does it mostly hang out inside that green target range? Second, look at the shaded blue bands around that line. Are they nice and narrow? That means stability. Or are they really wide? That means high variability. And third, just scan across the day and pinpoint the exact times when that line or those bands are pushing way out of range. All right, now that you know how to read the map, it's time for a little detective work. Let's talk about spotting the critical patterns. These are the recurring stories that your data is trying to tell you about what's really going on.
So, a classic pattern you might see is something called the dawn phenomenon. This is when you see your glucose start to creep up between, say, 4 and 8 in the morning, even when you haven't eaten a thing. So, what's going on? It's just your body's natural morning hormones, like cortisol, kicking in and making you a bit more insulin resistant. On your chart, it just looks like a steady uphill climb first thing in the morning.
Next up, a big one, post-meal spikes. If you see your glucose shooting past 180 within a couple of hours after you eat, yep, that's a spike. And it's a super direct signal. It's basically your body telling you that the carb count in your meal, or maybe the timing of your insulin, might need a little tweaking. Now for a really critical one, nocturnal hypoglycemia. This is any time your glucose dips below 70 while you're asleep. This pattern is legitimately dangerous, mainly because you might not wake up to feel the symptoms and treat it. If you see this in your data, it's not something to ignore. It is a top priority to bring up with your doctor right away. Okay, so you've got the key metrics down, you can read the AGP chart, and you can even spot some patterns. So what now? Well, this brings us to our final section, building your own data-driven action plan. This is how we turn all of this knowledge into actual, real-world improvement. Professionals use a systematic method called SOAP, and there's no reason you can't use it too. It's a super simple 4-step review you can do every week. S is for statistics. Quickly review your 5 core metrics. O is for overview. Take a look at the big picture on your AGP chart. A is for analyze. Identify those specific patterns we just talked about. And P is for plan. Choose just 1 or 2 small, manageable changes to try for the next week. That's it. And you know what? Using this framework will make your doctor's visits 1,000 times more productive. So before your next appointment, just run through this checklist. Generate a 14-day AGP report. Jot down your key stats, your TIR, your CV, and especially your TBR. Identify the 1 or 2 main patterns you're seeing, and then come up with specific questions about them. You'll go from being a passive patient to an active, informed partner in your own healthcare. So, moving forward, how do you do this regularly? Well, you really got 2 paths. There's the manual analysis, just set aside maybe 30 minutes a week and run through that SOAPS framework yourself, or you can look into AI automation. There are tools out there that can do pretty much the same analysis and even spot hidden connections for you in just about 10 minutes. The main thing to remember is this: you don't need a medical degree to understand what your own data is telling you. You just need the right framework, and now you have it. You can finally turn that confusing sea of numbers into clear, decisive action and have a totally different kind of conversation with your doctor. If you're curious about that AI analysis we mentioned, you can check it out at health.getware.com. The power, truly, is in your hands now.